In our quest to master intervals, inversions are often the trickiest part. But this is so helpful to understand when we talk about the distance between pitches in a melody, and it gets even more fun when discussing the quality of intervals when looking at chords and harmonies. Today I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks I've been using to help hundreds of students understand interval inversions. And I have a ton, it's just packed with examples that we're going to work through together to make sure you're really understanding these interval inversions. We're going to focus on perfect major and minor intervals today, but if you want to know more about augmented and diminished intervals, stick around for my next video. We're going to talk through those intervals next. And for hanging out with me today, I have my free music theory survival guide. Just go to joshring.com/free. It has all of the intervals that we're going to talk about today and a whole lot more. I think you'll find it super helpful. All right, let's first talk about inversions, specifically with major versus minor. But first, I want to backtrack a little bit and look at just interval size like we did in the first video. And just to recap, the interval sizes will always add up to 9 when we're talking about inversions. So just to unpack that, right, the C up to a D was your second, or a C down to a D was your seventh, because 2 plus 7 gets you to the 9, and on down the line we go. All of these will add up to 9. And the same kind of thing is true when we're talking about our inversions, our major versus minor. So first, perfects will always be perfects, right? So that C up to a G, that's a perfect fifth, but a C down to a G is a perfect fourth, right? So perfects are always going to be perfect. That's why they're so perfect. All right, major, on the other hand, is always going to be opposite of minor, right? So the C, for instance, up to that A is that major sixth, but then the C down to that same A is going to be your minor third, right? So major minors are opposites, but the 6 and 3 still add up to that 9. If I make it the minor versions, right? So the C up to that A flat being your minor sixth, then the C down to the A flat's got to be your major third, because it's always got to be major and minor being opposites, and the 6 plus the 3 still adding up to that 9. So to see that a little more clearly, we have the C up to an E would be your major third, but a C down to an E would be your minor sixth, right? So here I have it kind of the E major scale in gray. You can see that normally for the E major scale, the sixth note would be a C sharp, but I've lowered that to a C natural, right? So that's another way of thinking of it, is that I've lowered it from the major perspective, so it's minor. Or just to see it another way, kind of dividing the octave here, you can still see it's dividing the octave perfectly, so it's still major and minor opposites. The 3 and the 6 still add up to 9. Let's unpack this with a big C to B flat. There's your minor seventh, right? Because normally in the C major scale it'd be a B natural, but I've lowered it, right? So I have now a lowered seventh, so I have the minor seventh. But the inversion of the C down to a B flat would just be a major second. So again, the 7 plus the 2 is still 9. Major and minor are opposites. Or again, seeing it dividing the octave more clearly, we can see that C to B flat is still the minor, C down to the B flat is still the major, because major and minor are opposites, and the 7 plus the 2 always have to add up to that 9 for these inversions. And again, we'll look at augmented and diminished, especially with inversions, in my next video. But for now, we're just going to focus on major and minor when we're talking about inversions here. All right, before we start practicing together, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps you spread the word so I can keep helping as many people as possible. So if I said I wanted to go down a perfect fourth from A, I know it'd have to be some type of E when I count down, so always make sure you do your interval size first. So the 4 is always going to be the same. Now it's just figuring out what in the world is going to be that accidental. And we know the rule with perfects: if the first one has an accidental, the second one needs the same accidental. Again, the exception being between F and B. But since we know A flats to E flats, both of those need a, since the first one had a flat, we would know the second one needs a flat as well. So then the inversion of a perfect fourth would then be a perfect fifth up. Let's do then this minor second. So E down a minor second would just be a half step. So it'd have to go to some type of D, right? Don't forget that. It can't, you might say, oh, it's got to be a half step, but it can't be E to E flat. It has to be E to D sharp, right? So there's your half step. It has to be some type of D for it to be a second. And then thinking through, what is the inversion of a minor second down? Well, that's got to be a major seventh up. Again, major and minor opposites. It always adds up to 9. 2 plus 7 get us our 9. Let's try this with a major third down. So C down to some type of A. Again, always do your interval size first. So to unpack this a little bit, I wanted to show us just visually what's happening. So I now have this like major third, and if I also start on C and go up then to a minor third, you can see that I've lowered the top note because the bottom note has to stay the same. But here I'm doing inversions, which means I'm starting really at the E and going down to the C to get the major thirds. When I go from the E and I go down a minor third, I can't move the top note. The top note's got to stay the same. That's my starting point. So down a minor third really means I'm raising the bottom number. So it might be more helpful, instead of thinking as major lowers to get to minor, is that a major interval is going to get smaller to get to minor. Or if I have a minor interval to start, I'm going to make it bigger to make it major. So when I have this, right, A to C right now is currently a minor third. But if I want to make it a major third, you might say, oh, A to C sharp. But you can't raise the top note. The top note's got to stay at a C. So since it's currently minor, I need to make it bigger to make it major. And I can only move the bottom note. So that means that A has to become A flat to make that interval bigger. So there's my major third down. Then thinking through what is the inversion of a major third, that would be a minor sixth, right? So a minor sixth up. And last one, minor third down, right? So the A down to some type of F would be a third. And right now, F to A, you might say, well, that's a major third. So then to make it minor, you might say wouldn't that be F to A flat, right? But you can't move the top note, got to move the bottom. So you got to make that smaller to make it minor. So now we have A to F sharp. And then again, the inversion would be now major sixth up. All right, just a few more. Let's do this minor seventh down from the E, be some type of F, right? So what I've been doing is thinking, okay, if the F is the major scale, that means F to E is my major seventh. Okay, I need to now make it smaller. So I'm going to make it smaller. I got to move the bottom notes. Or I could also, again, do the inversion, which would be a major second up, right? So the E up to an F sharp, right? Or last but not least, a major sixth down from B flat. So B flat's got to go to some type of D. And I might say, well, D up to B flat, that's going to be the minor sixth. So I got to make it bigger. And I got to make the distance farther away from B flat. Right? So if I made it D sharp, that'd be closer to the high B flat. So I got to lower it to make it farther away. So there's my D flat would be my major sixth. Or I could think of the inversion being the minor third, B flat up to D flat being my minor third. So let's practice this in context with a melody. And this is the melody we had at the first video when we were just looking at interval size. So I'm going to put up the interval size here that we had from the first video. And now we're going to unpack the intervals from smallest to largest and see what kind of interval size are they. And now that we know interval size, we're now going to look at interval quality as well. So first, unpacking my seconds, right? I now know that the D sharp to E's, those are my minor seconds. Whereas at the end of the melody, the D down to a C is a major second down. Then unpacking my thirds, I had that third at the beginning, which was the E and G, G down to E. I know that's going to be a minor third. Compared now to the major third I have, right? So the E up to a G sharp. Or right at the end of the melody, the B up to a D, there's my minor third. All right, so unpacking the fourths, these are actually all perfect because the accidentals are the same. Easy as that. Again, the one exception is when I have B going to an F. And then last but not least, I have this G sharp to E's. Again, we said some type of sixth. So a few ways to unpack this one. We could say, well, the inversion is E up to G. We just said that was a major third a minute ago. So we know the inversion then of the G sharp up to E would be the minor sixth. Another way to think about it, we could compare it to something a little easier. Say G natural. G natural to E flat would be my minor sixth, right? Because G to E would be the major sixth in a scale. Or we could compare it to the perfect intervals. G sharp to G sharp is the perfect fifth. So then a half step above a perfect interval is your minor interval. So another way to get to a minor sixth. All right, let's practice this with one more melody together. And so what I would suggest doing is pausing this video now and work through all of these intervals as ascending or descending, starting first with interval size, then you can focus on the quality of perfect, major, or minor. And I'm actually going to play it real quick while you are working through it. All right, so let's just put up the interval sizes first of ascending and descending, because those are going to be our starting spot. Now we can focus on quality. So let's start with the smallest intervals, our minor and major intervals, right? So again, half steps being our minor second. So the A flat down to G is our minor second, or the C up to the D is our major second because it's a whole step. Or then the little half step right after that is D up to E flat, again, being a half step, so it's a minor second. Some thirds that we have, and the third measure we have that D down to B, again B flat from the key signature, so no, that's a major third. Same thing. And your G down to E flat, there's your major third as well. We have a perfect fifth down here in the middle of the first measure. So the G down to a C, there's your perfect fifth there. We have the major sixth, the B flat up to G, major six, right? Because it's the sixth note of the B flat major scale. Then another way to think about it, true, is the B flats to F. Again, there's your exception for the perfect interval. So you have the perfect fifth to start. A whole step above gets you to the G, gets you to the major sixth. Some sevenths that we have, so we have a minor seventh first. So the B flat up to A flat was your minor seventh. Again, because the A natural would be your major seventh as the seventh note of the B flat scale. So we've lowered that. So we have now the minor seventh. Or this E flat up to D, your major seventh. Again, that's the seventh note of the E flat major scale. But some other ways to practice both of these, right? B flat to B flat being perfect. So a whole step below perfect gets us a minor seventh. Or again, E flat to E flat, perfect interval. Half step now down to D gets us our major seventh, right? So don't forget those cool tricks. Or one other way is to think of the inversion. So the A flat up to B flat would be a major second, right? So the opposite of a major second would be a minor seventh. Or D up to E flat was a minor second because of the half step. Or the opposite, right? The inversion would be the major seventh, right? So don't forget those tricks as well. Don't forget your free music theory survival guide. Just go to joshring.com/free to get your free download today. It has all of these intervals that we've been talking about and a whole lot more. You'll find it super helpful. And in the comments below, what strategy is going to help you the most? What tip and trick are you going to take with you? And just thanks for hanging out with me today. Have a wonderful day.